I am a mining investor and an editor here at Resource Stock Digest. Mr. Gerardo Del Real, a very well-rested Mr. Gerardo Del Real, with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, who, of course, is also an investor and the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle, amongst other hats that the gentleman wears. This is the 311th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk tanking markets. We're going to talk tariffs. We're going to talk what we're investing in, what's working, what's not, US dollar weakness, a whole heck of a lot to get into. But beforehand, Mr. Hodge, how goes you? Congrats to you, your family, and your son on his birthday. Special day. Congratulations, yes, sir.
I appreciate that. It is little Nicholas's birthday. He turns 6 years old today, so happy birthday to the little guy. He has requested hot dogs and shrimp for dinner, so we'll make that happen.
I love it.
A lovely combination. How were you? You said well rested, back from a little mini vacation. Welcome back.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm very rested, recharged, ready to put belt to ass, as the saying goes, right? Ready to get going. Spent a few days on what I'm calling honeymoon 2.0 with my beautiful wife, and had a phenomenal time and had a spectacular time out there. It's probably my favorite place on the planet. So it was nice to go and be able to spend 3 or 4 days there, but it's also great to be back. And man, never a dull moment, right? Market meltdown. We got tariffs around the world, global trade wars, definitely a lot to get to. Let's start with the overall indices. And I think today is a prime example of what a lot of this year is going to look like. Stuff that's working, really working, despite stuff that's not really not working. And when I say really not working, I'm talking about the overall indices down. The Dow down 4%, down 1,650 points. I wonder if they figured like the market circuit breaker person was like a DEI hire, and like maybe Doge got rid of him or her, because aren't they supposed to stop like the market from falling after like 2 or 2.5%? Anyhow, the NASDAQ is down 6%. Nobody pressed the button on that one. S&P 500 down 5%. And yet, despite that, gold held up relatively well. Silver got spanked a little bit. Copper held up really, really well. So overall indices, tariff threats, no longer threats. Tariffs are here. They are widespread, and they're going to be paid for by American citizens and citizens around the world. So any thoughts on the tariffs and the volatility?
Oh, we're not going to pay the tariffs, Gerardo. The other people are going to pay the tariffs. It's great for America. It's Liberation Day. No, the volatility is here. The sell-off is here, and we told you as much. So I want to look back just for a second, but then I do want to look forward. I mean, it was in February I was writing, monthly macro issues about the golden age of uncertainty, right? And I was laughing the other day. I was eating lunch, and my wife was in the kitchen, and the CNBC was talking about uncertainty. It's been the same thing for 2 months. We knew this uncertainty was coming. Today is really poignant down day in the market, obviously, having just had the Rose Garden Liberation Day ceremony yesterday, April 2nd. And so the market is reacting to that. I might just share my screen for a second, if that's
Please.
okay, and then ramble about the macro markets. So let me see if I can get it right. Can I do an entire screen? It says I can. There it is. Okay, so this is the heat map. For just today, right, in the U.S. stock market, lots of red. So, let your eyes go to the red on the left-hand side, and you'll see that some of these bigger tech names in a single day down 7, 8, 9%. I would remind you that in a typical life, in a non-bizarro world, those are like annual type moves for broad indices, right? Like the S&P typically moves up 7 to 10% per year. When you talk about conservative returns, you use 8 to 8%, right? So anyway, they're doing annual moves in a day. But then I would encourage your eyes to move down and to the right and look at the consumer non-durables. There's some green on the screen. So one of those is PM. It's up 4%. That's Philip Morris. It's a stock that I've highlighted on this podcast. It's a stock that we're positioned in. You could also look at some of the health names, J&J, and then some of the staples like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, etc. So That's one thing. And the point there is that the word is orderly, right? Yeah, it's a terrible sell off. We're past correction point now. We're into bear market territory. But there are sectors that are working. Before we started recording, you said it's terrible out there, but not for us. And it's like just last week I was given the first quarter call in for foundational profits, and I showed like my return on my IRA for the year, and it was up 15% year to date. As you look at the S&P today, it's down 8 to 9% year to date, right? And why? Well, it's because we were positioned in some of these things, literally Philip Morris, like you see on the screen, but also utilities, which are some of the green boxes you see there. Next Era, for example, Atmos Energy. And so, it's not all the absolute worst out there. There's a lot of reaction. And let's just scroll through the numbers for a second. So last week I was presenting and I gave you these two lines on the S&P, and I was saying I had a question mark up there, right? It was either gonna go up through that green line or it was gonna go down through that red line, right? And so here we
Timber.
got it down through the red line, and it's lining up pretty closely with 5,400 on the S&P, which is where I just put my cursor there. We'll see if it holds here. I believe it does. People are going to want to talk about jobs and recession and all this sort of stuff. I continue to believe we don't get recession. I continue to believe this is a Band-Aid. I think we get growth in the second half of the year. And so we were positioned pretty well coming into this, like I just said. And even some of the smaller, more speculative things that you dabble in on the resource side have held up pretty well because of some of the commodity prices and because of some of the catalysts that they have coming up here. So that was a bit of hot air for me. Sorry for hogging the mic, but happy to talk about other macro stuff. You
No,
want
no,
to
no,
talk
no.
about?
That was the exact answer that I wanted, and the question that I asked, right? And so, yeah, look, it's great when when you outperform a market the way that we've outperformed the market, and I'm talking core positions. I'm talking like everybody knows what my single largest personal holding is, right? I won't mention the name here. I'll save it for the premium portion of the podcast. But that stock is up 74% in the last 30 days. It's up 17% this week. That's up 17% this week on a week where the other stuff is dropping like a rock, right? And so it's positioning ahead of the volatility. It's positioning for long-term trends that are tailwinds even during the kind of market collapse that we're seeing right now. And by the way, I don't think it's anywhere near over. I think that the markets are hoping that Jerome steps in. I don't actually believe Jerome is stepping in anytime soon. I think they'll continue to sell off. I mean, when you have 45% tariffs on Vietnam and you have 46% tariffs on Vietnam, there's a Chinese tariffs, European tariffs. There's a reason why Apple's down nearly 10% in one day. That's a massive drop. That's a massive drop. And it speaks to getting on the right side of things. And, I am first and foremost a resource speculator. And look, we have to talk gold. Despite the fact that the market's collapsing and despite the fact that all of these companies are, deeply in the red, gold is sitting at $3,100. And it seems like every time someone tries to sell it, be it for a margin call or be it to keep the price down, it turns right back around. So another record high in gold. Hopefully y'all are starting to see the trend here about positioning ahead of the herd, as the late great Mr. Dines would say, right? You have to be able to see these things before they happen to make sure that you get the most out of the cycle. And I'll pat ourselves on the back today, because in a day where everybody's panicking, me, friends, family, and everyone else's portfolio that's, invested alongside of me, having a damn good day, having a damn good week, having a damn good month. It's been a damn good 2025, and it's about to get better.
Yeah. We've had a lot of success. Have we gotten things wrong? By all means, I have stocks in the
No
portfolio
doubt.
that are down today. I mean, my overall portfolio had a down day. It's hard not to when the overall indices are down like they are on a single day. But on the whole, having a large amount of cash, having positioned in gold itself and in some of these gold equities, both on the longer term safer side and the speculative side, have had a fairly good sell-off over the past couple of months here. The market's going to start looking forward soon. And so I don't want to say I'll take the other side of the coin, that there's not going to be more carnage ahead, but I do want to say that there's going to be like the next iteration of tariff thinking now, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been
Yep.
going on since February with the threats and the pullbacks, and we had a tariff weekend, and then we canceled that, and then we extended it, and then we delay, and then we defer, and then we give exemptions. And so what's going to happen now is, some of these countries are going to come to the table. There likely to be some negotiations. The market will start talking about that. Um, and so anyway, we'll keep an eye on the VIX, but I don't think we get a market crash, and I still don't think we get a recession, but certainly we're getting a massive rotation. That's what the words I wanted to get out of my mouth. So you saw that where the most red was on the screen. And if you continue to get a ton of red, like babies are going to be thrown out with bathwater. So that's why I'm not just hoping, but I don't think we get a massive, massive sell-off. And let's just look at gold for 1 second, I guess. You brought it up. So
You answered the question before I asked. Yes,
what's
sir. Take a peek.
yeah, so it's worth just running. Oh, did I do it? Yeah, here we go. So gold looks really good here. You
Yeah,
had
that's
this,
pretty.
yeah, it flashed down here to 3053 on this, high volatility day that we're having today. But if you pull it back out to a year and start drawing lines, I mean, this can get down to basically 3,000 and still be a bullish chart, another $100 below where we are today. And so I think gold stays bullish. You mentioned that silver was soft. It had pulled down to $32 or something. I think it's an opportunity to buy silver. I added some silver stocks, in fact, this week and rotated into some consumer staple names. So gold continues to be bullish for lots of reasons, and I think it stays that way. So yeah, what's next?
No, I think a $3,000 floor for the gold price is music to my ears and makes my contrarian heart smile, knowing that we started positioning, in some of the higher quality gold juniors and exploration companies, years ahead of this price rip and this massive bull market that we have. Couldn't agree with you more on silver. Didn't like that it touched the 31 level, but I did like the U-turn it made after being down, some 3-4%. It actually turned right back up, I should say, and almost made it past the 32 level. I'm talking spot price, of course. I want to talk copper. Copper hung in there remarkably well on a day where, again, the tariffs, the day what they branded, the stupid ass name, the day of liberation.
Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. How's that feeling, folks? Do you feel liberated?
Can liberate you from some of your gains you had in your account.
Yeah, I'm telling you. We'll talk about that later on. It's funny, but no, look, copper's still holding up really, really well. Again, another market, another trend that we have structural deficits materializing in the copper space. Tariffs, no tariffs, recessions, no recessions. Copper's going to do well because there's simply more demand than there is supply. So again, I urge you all, if you have not topped off your copper exposure and your copper positions, please do so. Everybody knows what my single largest personal holding is. Gives you great access to both exposure to copper and exposure to gold. There's probably a whole hell of a lot of both of those, and we'll know soon as drilling will commence there. We'll talk about that in the premium portion of the podcast. US dollar, this one had itself a week. It fell all the way down to the 101 level, currently just above 102. What's that chart look like in your analysis there, Nick?
Well, I told you it was the trend was downward. You had asked me a couple of weeks ago. We were having a little bump up in the dollar, I think, up to like 104, 106, something like that in February. And I was saying that the trend was down. So I'll do one more time the chart here. I will take a look. And I mean, you see what just happened to the dollar here. So it looks like it's not going to catch itself until down here right at 100, right? And that's not super low. We were just at 100 back in October last year before the election, and what I see here is meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? I mean, the dollar was at 100 right before the election. Trump was going to fix everything here. It was going to be Doge and fiscal and monetary tightness and all that. And then, oh, whoopsie, nope, he's going to keep funding the Department of Defense and the military. We're going to get tax cuts. We're going to continue to run up the deficit. And then, oh, we're going to have a Rose Garden party about tariffing everybody in the world, and then we just come all the way full circle on the dollar from where it was before people started pulling the election lever in November. Some of this is pricing in what you said earlier, the Fed stepping back into the market. I don't see that really happening until
Yeah.
June, certainly not in this month or in May. And so I would say that the dollar goes down to 100 and catches itself there, but definitely weak. And I would say more fuel for the gold and silver fire that we didn't see
Mm.
materialize today. Bond yields took it on the chin as well today, and that should be a strong tailwinds for gold. And that's what I was telling you, like, and telling other people I've been doing interviews with, like, gold has been doing this, and the dollar's been relatively strong, and so have rates, and now you got rates and then dollar going the other way. So it should be good for gold and the precious metals going forward from here.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely not my area of expertise, but I want to ask you about Bitcoin. Bitcoin, caught a bid here last week. It has not acted the way that gold has, right? Gold has been the safe haven here during days of months, I should say, of increased volatility. Over the last couple of months, we've seen the volatility index pick up in velocity. Thoughts on Bitcoin and just technically looking at the chart?
Yeah. I wrote a lot about this in the March issue of Foundational Profits because I think that Bitcoin is a must-own asset. And then at the same time, after I said that I think you can be able to own it at a cheaper price. So, Bitcoin is a risk-on asset, and we're clearly in a risk-off environment, right? And we know that some of the correlations are out the window. We know that, there's volatility in some of the big numbers, right? Like, we don't know what GDP is going to do. Inflation is currently softening, but likely will go up in the second half of the year. And so, all that to say that I think Bitcoin is just risk off right now. And when I look at the chart, which I'm doing right now, and I guess I'll do one more time,
Thank you, sir.
we'll share the screen, and I'll just show you what I see. Is I see Bitcoin coming back to this line that I have. I just keep lines on here, so you can see where that is, about 73,000. It didn't get there here in earlier March when it sold off, and for me, the chart needs to get down to at least here, 76, 75, but really wants to get down to this level for me is the best technical level. And I think you get at some point, as long as the VIX stays elevated and there's a little bit of fear in the market, I think you get a day where it does flash below 75,000. But again, all that said, I have limit orders to buy when it does, right? Like, I don't think it's going away. I think Bitcoin does get to six figures and whenever it gets there, next couple of years or whatever. And so I am looking for places to buy it, but right now I think there's more risk buying it than not, and I'm content to wait.
Got to ask you about uranium. Continues to be boring, much like the lithium space continues to get zero love. That makes my contrarian heart smile because I love buying stuff that's out of favor and waiting for the favor to come in, right? Any thoughts on the uranium and lithium space? Seen a lot of bargains out there.
Yeah, I would almost ask you, like, the equities continue to be soft. The spot price has now ticked up a little bit. It was all the way down close to 60. It's now ticked back up closer to 65. Gosh, commodities are sort of, all over the place. Oil was strengthening a bit and then sold off. Yeah, there's bargains to be had for sure. I mean, I've added to my URNJ position. There's a freebie for you, the Sprott Junior Uranium ETF. I haven't bought a lot of other stuff though. I mean, I guess added to my Denison and Energy Fuels, but haven't, like, on the speculative side, like, haven't done any private placements and haven't taken a ton of uranium meetings. I'm not seeing a ton of traction with results, coming out, drill results, but am keen to position for the longer term. I don't know what's going to be the near term catalyst that turns uranium back around, but I do know that it's in a long term bull market and is not going to stay this debased forever. So yeah, sort of like you, I see a lot of bargains around. What are you seeing in the uranium space?
I see a lot of hopelessness and desperation. I see people not knowing what they own. And that's important, right? I wanted to touch on that's kind of why I brought it up. I X, Twitter, whatever people call it nowadays, isn't real life, but it's always funny when every now and then I get like a bot that somebody created, saying things like, whatever happened to that Patriot call, that $50 Patriot call, or that $20 Patriot call. And my answer, I don't answer because I'm not talking to a bot, right? Like, I'm just not going to do it. If you don't have a face and a name that I can punch, then I don't want to talk to you, right? Like, we're not engaging with bots. But my answer in my mind that I would put out is nothing's happened to it. That was always the end game. We're not at the end game, folks. The end game was get into production or get bought out, right? That's when you're going to get, those kind of the $4, $5, $6 billion valuations that Patriot will one day merit and earn. Right now, absolutely not getting it. Again, I'm going to repeat what I've been saying. If stuff keeps working for me the way it's worked for me with some of my bigger positions, I'll take a little bit off the table here later in the year and turn right back around and go buy, a big boatload of Patriot. But understanding that I'm into that for the end game. The end game is always get that company to be a $5, $6, $7 billion company on its own merit as it gets closer to production. I have all the faith in the world that Ken Brinsden and the staff at Patriot, which continue to deliver, by the way, in the field. I have no doubt that company ends up with that type of valuation. I also have zero problems waiting another couple of years for that to play out. So it goes back to knowing what you own. Midas Gold, now Perpetual Resources, is another classic example of that, right? It's been volatile. It's taken a long time to get to where it's at. It's still undervalued. There's a freebie for you folks. And especially in this gold bull market, and for every $100 that the gold price goes up, its net present value on its asset, the Stibnite project, goes up some $300 or $400 million. So again, knowing what you own and then knowing what your end game is critical in these types of markets, especially with the smaller names, right? Patriot is still just a $500 million company, right? What was a couple of $1 billion company just a couple of years ago is a much better, more advanced company. Nobody cares right now because it's lithium, and nobody loves lithium right now. So yeah, I would say if you have a good timeline, there's bargains all over the place. But if you're looking to ride momentum, copper and gold is the and silver less so, but offering compelling upside. Those are the three commodities that are just going to continue to run, in my opinion.
Yeah, agree with that. I think there's probably also some slowdown, tech slowdown, and tariff stuff affecting uranium and lithium. I was just thinking while you were talking, we had this narrative in the past 6 months about, the AI data centers and
Yeah.
uranium and all this. And maybe the market is thinking that that's not going to be there. And so it's translating that into a slowdown. I got news for you. That was always, gravy on what was a pretty damn good piece of meat and potatoes already in terms of uranium supply demand fundamentals over the long term. And maybe in some respects with lithium as well, given the tariffs on batteries and
Sure.
battery metals, and maybe the market's thinking about a potential economic slowdown where we're not going to sell as many cars. I just don't see that, as I said, in the second half of the year. I think we get back to growth, and we were talking recently about how EV sales were still pretty robust.
Yeah,
So
very
agree that those are contrarian opportunities with the right time frame.
good stuff. Good stuff. Let's get into some of, yeah, I mean, it ties into the oil market, right? But it looks like to me that this administration, for all its promise of no new wars and all its promise of reducing the deficit, and oh yeah, I'm still fucking waiting on the Epstein files, right? That these jerks in Congress were running around in binders, doing TikTok dances with their little folder and being fucking overpaid monkeys in Congress. I don't understand why there's such an eagerness to go to war with Iran, other than they allegedly tried to have President Trump killed a couple of times while he was on the campaign trail. And we know he's a bit petty and vindictive when it comes to stuff like that. But I really liked the part of the administration prior to being elected that promised no new wars and promise to be efficient and good stewards of capital and promise to get the deficit down. Those are all things that I could really get on board with. Haven't seen any of it materialize, and it's quite the opposite. Ron Paul had a great comment earlier on X. He mentioned the fact that it took this administration a whopping 2.5 months to go from no new wars to warmongering and just, funding everything that's going on around the world. And by going on, I mean war and chaos and death and destruction for not very great reasons that I can see. It frustrates the hell out of me as a taxpayer. But again, I don't have my own lobbyist yet, so it's not much that I can do on that front. Any thoughts on just how quick the U-turn was for this administration?
I mean, my thoughts. Told you so. They told you that Doge wasn't going to cut the deficits or the debt. It's funny, there's a cartoon I've shared for a decade about the March of Tyranny, right? And it's the common people getting stepped on by basically the machine that's walking, and the left leg is the Republicans, and the right leg is the Democrats, etc. So it's funny that not funny that no matter who you
Yeah.
vote for, the bombs keep dropping and the deficits keep going up. So those are my thoughts. It's I mean, what do you want to talk about? I can recall, I think it was Rumsfeld talking about how we were going to topple 5 Middle Eastern countries
Hmm.
over the coming decades, and Iran would be sort of the last one on that list. So you can talk about the military industrial complex and the deep state or the establishment and sort of their long-term goals. But I don't spend a lot of my time sort of, again, allocating my capital based
Yeah.
on that sort of stuff. I just know that, until there is some real sort of revolution or a culmination of this fourth turning, that Trump was going to keep doing the same again. He was president before, and we saw what he did. The debt deficits went up, and he gave tax cuts, etc. So he's running the same playbook now. It looks like the tariffs are a little bit new, but no, look, I mean, the guy said, I can end the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 24 hours. Well, how's that ceasefire brokerage going with Putin, who hasn't agreed to it yet, right? And I told you the other week that oil was going back up because bombs were falling in Gaza again. And so he's made no progress on ceasefires or truces. And as you say, the military, the U.S. continues to fund the bombing of folks and countries across the world.
Yeah, and now we're getting, people that are in this country legally with no criminal records, being arrested and sent to a supermax prison in El Salvador. In one case, there was a Maryland man who was here legally, and they picked him up and they sent him to El Salvador. And look, I'll give credit where credit is due. At least the administration admitted that they messed up, but it took a journalist to out them, for them to admit that it was a mistake. They called it ICE admits to an administrative error after Maryland man sent to El Salvador to prison. Here's the fucking kicker. This is happening on U.S. soil. People are being picked up. They're being sent to another country, to a supermax prison, when they don't even deserve to be in prison. And get this, because the gentleman is now out of U.S. custody, we can't petition to bring him back. And because he's in El Salvador, but he's got legal status here in the U.S., El Salvador can't send him back without some sort of intermediate, arbitrary negotiation of diplomacy between the two governments. Like, what are we doing as a society, folks? Like, even Joe Rogan this week, again, came out and said, this shit can't be happening on U.S. soil. We can't just be picking people up because they look Hispanic. And then be absolutely clear, we haven't accidentally picked up any Irish people and sent them to the fucking El Salvador
My
prison.
red beard is
All
keeping
right?
me safe.
Yeah, your red beard is keeping you safe, Nick. The people getting picked up look Arab and look Hispanic, and let's be absolutely clear about that. I mean, I don't see how anybody on either side can support this stuff, man. Get rid of the criminals, lock them up. There's laws for that. Can we please make sure we're sending criminals? Can we can we focus on that first? And I talked about this last week, but then this stuff keeps happening, and it just frustrates me to no end, because the immigration issue is near and dear to my heart, and then just because I also love this country, but there's a much better way to govern, and man, it seems like a Jesus take the wheel moment, because so far I'm not the most impressed with like the first couple of months of the Trump presidency, I must say.
It's like Carrie Underwood driving home one night in the dark. Jesus, take the wheel. I mean, this still matters. I have the pocket Declaration of Independence and
Yeah.
Constitution, which I keep on the the desk right behind me. So you
Yeah.
can't just, we talked about immigration last week, but you can't just shirk the Constitution based on your preferences. And again, a lot of this is going to be litigated. So, and a lot I haven't, you know, kept on top of, maybe as close as you or as close as others. But in the case of the sending the folks to Venezuela, there's a broader story there with Bukele and that prison that he
Yeah.
built and the gangs that he put in there. We don't have to talk about that. But as it relates to the United States, the very day that they had those folks on the plane, that's been a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah.
A judge ruled that, he wasn't allowed to do that. And then
Yep.
they sent the plane anyway. I never really saw what the recourse was of that. I mean, the folks were gone, obviously, so there wasn't recourse. And it related to some act. I'm not going to get it right, but it was like an alien act in the
The
late 17,
Espionage Act. Yeah.
17, late 1700s or 1800s or something that is rarely used except for instances of war. So, they're definitely reaching. And we talked about the girl from Tufts. Yeah, you can't be doing
Yeah.
un-American stuff. And you talk about what was their word before? Lawfare. I heard them talking about that word a lot, right? Well, they're doing the same thing, just from the opposite side of the spectrum now, right? They're still using police agencies and the Justice Department and the legal system to prosecute, right? Folks that they don't like because of seemingly their opinions in some cases. And again, we say it all the time, sure, get the criminals out, etc. But there's
Yeah.
still, you remember, Trump is the rule of law guy. Like, you still
Yeah.
got to sort of follow the rule of law. And so, anyway, administrative errors and snafus, it's funny how those things happen, for sure.
It's funny, not funny, that those things happen when you don't abide by the due process and the checks and balances that our country was founded on, right? That people seem to have forgotten that. And I know it's the stuff of fourth turnings, but God, is it disappointing. And I can't imagine what, people that are actually going through it, the people being sent that shouldn't be sent. This man's wife and this man's kids sitting there wondering when they're going to get their husband or father back, or if they're going to get him back and how they're going to get him back. Right. So yeah. Anyhow,
and at the same time, it's worth noting, pardoning people when it's politically expedient, right? So folks that have committed crimes or who allege to commit crimes that are, on one hand, pardoned by Trump, and then, so it's very subjective, it seems, like which crimes are crimes or more crimey. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely a Bizarro World. I want to get to the premium portion of the podcast. I think now's probably a good time to get to that. Just to summarize, everybody, we're hugely bullish on copper, hugely bullish on gold, silver looking good, still waiting for a breakout. That will happen in 2025. Get those positions topped off, and
let's get it. Starting to plan for the spring, for spring break, and so I'm looking forward to it as well. Let's get to drilling.
Let's get it is right. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was the 311th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Have a great week, everyone. Remember, yes, there is a way, and there are ways to make money when the rest of the world is losing some, folks. You just have to position accordingly and know what you own. Have a great one out there, everybody.
See ya.